3.
Alex, firstly, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. There's been a lot going on in pre-season, and it's the first time we've really got a chance to sit down since you joined the club. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, can you just explain what you do here at Bath Rugby and kind of what your background is and what's led you to Bath Rugby?
Yeah, so I'm head of physical performance at Bath, and what that essentially means is that I help to prepare the players physically to meet the demands of how the coaches want to play the game. So we work back from how Johan wants to play the game, and then look at what gaps might exist from a physical perspective and look to plug those.
So when we talk about physical performance, it is S&C, it is fitness, it is how strong you are or how fast you are. So there's a lot of moving factors within there that really reflects physical performance.
Yeah, so there's some examples of the qualities that we might look to improve, but we never start out with the intention of they've got to be stronger. It's always, what is it that we need to grow on the field? So what are some of these actions that they're currently not performing at the level that the coaches would like them to? And if, like I say, there's a shortfall because of a physical underpinning, then we'll look to target that and get them better in that area. So we're going to do some collision conditioning for 15 minutes. So there'll be 10 reps. You'll do 3 reps here, 3 reps over here, and 4 reps there. A bit like what we've been doing in terms of that sit stuff, it's all out from the start, and they'll be different in terms of nature. There'll be some kind of pushing contests in a static position, then you'll be transitioning from that into pick and goes. There's going to be some tackle, there's going to be some clean out, there's going to be some reload. There's 3 things that we want you to concentrate on. So in that pushing contest, it's got to be a live pushing contest. It can't just be a lean in and just hold a position for a period of time. So that has got to be live, it's got to be real competitive. Yeah, it's going to be low pushing contest. Whenever we transition, there's got to be urgency in what we're doing. We've got to have that Guga mindset. It can't just be that we get up, we amble over to the next thing, and then we go. And then when we get to the collision, it's got to be punchy. We've got to really switch it on. We've got to get into those low positions. We've got to be explosive. So we've got to look for those 3 things when we're going. Blaze will explain this drill, and you'll be split into groups of 8. So 8 players will be working here. 8 players. We'll go for 4 minutes. Then there'll be a 1-minute transition, and you'll switch to the new station. Okay. One of the ways that we work sort of collaboratively is keeping the players fit and available. So robustness is a key aspect of rugby union and any team sport really. If you're going to win matches, it's about having your best players on the field. I'm very modest. I don't think that I change them massively from a impact perspective, but what I can offer is helping them to be robust and resilient. And we'll work collaboratively in terms of the medical department, Sarah and the nutrition side of things, with the coaches and other stakeholders to do that. And we work on sort of leveraging each other's expertise and making sure that we do what I call a coat of armour programme in the best way that we can.
What would you say is the most challenging part of what you've got to do here at Bath Rugby?
It's probably how fierce the competition is. The demands of the game are ferocious, and there's no sort of easy team. All the teams in the league are competitive, and then when you go into the Champions Cup, obviously it goes up a notch because you're playing against the best teams in Europe. So I think it's just the level of competition and how demanding it is.
You talk about getting players robust and in the best condition possible. So let's have a quick reflection of last season since you joined. Where do you see the improvements within the squad and what's kind of evolved over the last season?
Yeah, so I think at the start we had quite a few injuries when we first started. Myself and Rory tried to work through those and make sure that we gave Johan more options in terms of his team selection. At the back end of the season, so the last 4 games when we managed to get 4 5-point wins, Johan was selecting from a pool of 17 players. So then he was able to put out a team that had some cohesion, some continuity, and as a consequence, I think we got the results. So that's always something that's in the forefront of our minds, and that's something that Johan challenges us on, is he wants the right players available for the right matches, and I think that's what we helped to deliver at the back end of the season as a whole.
If we now look to this season, and we know where we come from the start last season to where we are now, when does pre-season start for you to really start to look at what this block looks like before we really get going to rugby in September?
So we'll always do a review of last pre-season, and there'll be lots of learnings from that. Off the back of that, we'll then start to do some sort of rough planning for the next pre-season, and then over the course of the year, I'm just adding to that plan. So I'd say it's probably a good 11 months out from the start of pre-season, but it really hots up in terms of the detail of pre-season around March, sort of April time for me.
How are the players looking right now in terms of, we're now 4 weeks, 5 weeks into pre-season? How are the players looking, and how are we kind of going along with pre-season at the moment?
I think we're in a good spot at the moment. The coaches are pleased with the level of our practice, both in terms of level of skill execution and some of the decisions they're making under a reasonable amount of pressure and stress. So I think we're in a good spot for where we are in week 5. We'll look to move that forward next week, and then we'll have a 2-week break. We'll sort of come back, reacclimatise, and then we'll move it forward going into the Prem Cup fixtures.
So it's very much a phased approach. You come back in on week 1 where maybe it's 50%, 60%, and then you start to grow that as we get closer to the middle of pre-season, then building towards.
Yeah, so certainly the first couple of weeks are about raising what we call their filled coat of armour, making sure that they're tolerant of the practice and competition, well, practice loads again, making sure that we've notched up their sort of perceived ceiling. So just a period of 5 weeks can cause that to decay. So we need to make sure that we pull that up again, so they're able to accept the challenge of some of the practice sessions that we put on.
I got to the red, Chris. Pull out! Pull out! Let's go! Let's get it! Let's get it! Let's get it! As you can, lads. Point the hill.
Keep it going.
I've been watching some of the training sessions, we've been filming some content, and some of the sessions have been pretty grueling. So how do you come up with some of these drills? Do you have like a textbook, torture book for the lads, or do you have to delve into some areas to find new ways to improve physical performance?
Yeah, no, I do have a bit of a torture book, but yeah, and it's ever evolving. It's always adding to that torture book. You know, sometimes the players give me good ideas, so you know, yeah, it's a combined effort, I'd say.
I guess that's pretty good when players come to you with suggestions, because at least then they're going to be, not to say that they aren't, but engaged with the sessions so that they are actually improving their performance.
Definitely, I try and capture them at a moment of weakness, and that's when I take their ideas, yeah.
God, it almost sounds cruel, but I think everyone already thinks fitness and SMC is, don't they? So we talk around the programme that you're putting together to get players in peak condition ready for the season, and that obviously comes over a number of weeks. So how are you developing these programmes to be able to hit you know, good speed or good strength and power, or otherwise?
Yeah, so we're not necessarily focused on those qualities in the first instance. We'll consider where they might be lacking on the field, and if it is that they're not able to take space at the rate that the coaches want, that might need us to improve their speed, and then we will put in place a programme over a period of time to achieve that. But if we take speed as an example, it's not about making them track athletes, it's considering that they are team sport players, and it's to develop that game speed. So being able to react to different cues on the field, making sure that they're not only able to run fast, but they're able to decelerate as well and change direction. So they're important things to consider.
So I guess there's also a consideration based on positions. So is there certain expectations based on the position that you've got to play as well?
Yeah, so depending on the position, that will dictate what physical qualities are important. So like type 5 forwards, for example, they'll find themselves in situations where they need to produce high levels of force. They need to do that repeatedly. So they need to get up, go again, and that's something we'll consider in how we shape their programme.
And when we kind of look back at pre-season, we think of it, this is kind of your area at the minute to get players ready for peak condition for the season. But how do you maintain that once the season gets going, so that when the attention turns to skills and tactics, physical performance and fitness and strength or other attributes aren't then kind of dropped off?
Yeah, so from week 1, we like to make sure that there's lots of threads of rugby going. So gone are the days where we house players in the gym and it's all about S&C. That's not how we run things here at Bath. we try and make sure that we progress the rugby over course of time, and that coincides with raising their physical qualities. So in season, it's very easy to move and transition because we've worked in that integrated manner from the start.
So just picking up then from in season, obviously next season, or this season rather, slightly different in context of number of games. There's an international break in February, March time. So from your point of view, kind of how do you assess that as opposed to kind of constant week in, week out of rugby that we've seen over the last couple of seasons?
I'm very lucky I work with a head of rugby who's on the front foot of those things. So Johan is incredibly well planned, and we've actually laid out our annual plan to date. So we know where we're going to put in our rest weeks and the games that we're going to be really targeting. So we know that there's going to be some really intense playing blocks, and there's going to be some games where, or there's going to be some playing periods where we play 10, 15 games straight. But we will be weaving in some rest periods, and we'll be clever in the way that we design our training to ensure that the guys can bounce back from the games and hopefully give optimal performance at the weekend.